The collapse of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. The Achaemenid Persian Empire was once the largest and most powerful empire of its time, stretching from the Indus Valley to the Balkans. Yet, by 330 BCE, this mighty realm had fallen to Alexander the Great's Macedonian armies. The collapse of the Persian Empire was a multifaceted process, driven by a combination of internal weaknesses and external pressures. In this video, we'll explore the key reasons behind its fall: political instability, military weaknesses, economic strains, cultural divides, internal unrest, the role of satraps, and strategic mistakes, especially those of the last king, Darius III. Political instability and succession issues. One primary factor in the Persian Empire's decline was chronic political instability at the top. Succession crises and palace intrigues frequently racked the Achaemenid dynasty, undermining central authority. Great kings like Cyrus and Darius I established strong rule, but later monarchs faced coups, assassinations, and civil wars. Xerxes I was murdered by a court insider, sparking a power struggle among his heirs. After Artaxerxes I, a rapid succession of short-lived rulers were each toppled by rivals until Darius II secured the throne. This pattern continued. Artaxerxes III seized power by eliminating royal relatives, only to be poisoned by his minister Bagoas. Such turmoil meant the empire often lacked a stable, respected leader, eroding legitimacy and weakening unity. Military conflicts and weaknesses. Militarily, the once formidable Persian army began to show serious weaknesses. Early kings built a vast, multi-ethnic force that conquered Babylon and Egypt, but over time its reputation faded. The Greco-Persian Wars exposed these cracks. Despite massive invasions of Greece, Darius I and Xerxes I suffered major defeats at Marathon and Salamis. The imperial army, made of diverse levies with varying equipment and training, struggled with cohesion. By the 4th century BCE, Persia's military had grown complacent, while rivals like Macedon were modernizing. Over-reliance on cavalry and lightly armed troops left the Persians at a disadvantage against disciplined Greek and Macedonian formations. When Alexander invaded, the empire's armies were large but poorly coordinated, unable to adapt to his superior tactics. Economic strains and administrative challenges. The Achaemenid Empire's immense size required a complex bureaucracy and vast revenue. While Darius I's tax system and road network once kept things efficient, the costs of empire soon became burdensome. Provinces were heavily taxed to fund wars and royal projects, breeding resentment. Lavish spending and failed campaigns, especially Xerxes' invasion of Greece, drained the treasury. Corruption among officials and satraps further eroded efficiency. As oversight declined, taxes went missing, infrastructure faltered, and central control weakened. By the 330s BCE, Persia was overextended. It struggled to finance new armies or sustain far-flung garrisons. The empire looked rich on paper, but its economic core was hollowed out. Cultural and societal factors. Culturally, the empire's diversity was both a strength and a source of tension. Early rulers like Cyrus and Darius I had governed through tolerance, respecting local religions and customs, but later kings grew distant from their subjects. In places like Babylon, Persian kings ceased performing traditional rituals, alienating local elites. Egypt too saw the Persians as occupiers. The cultural divide widened and loyalty waned. Within Persia, the nobility's growing luxury and isolation at court contrasted sharply with earlier generations' vigor. Decadence and distance weakened the bond between rulers and subjects. When crisis came, many provinces felt little attachment to Persian rule. Cities like Babylon surrendered without resistance. The empire had lost not just battles, but the loyalty of its people. External invasions. Alexander the Great's campaign. The external blow came from the west. In 334 BCE, Alexander the Great invaded Asia Minor with a small but professional Macedonian army. Darius III, newly enthroned and preoccupied elsewhere, underestimated the threat. After Alexander's early victory at Granicus, many Greek cities under Persian control revolted in his favor. Darius then confronted Alexander at Issus in 333 BCE, but the narrow terrain nullified his numerical advantage. Darius fled the battlefield, abandoning even his family, shattering Persian morale. 2 years later, at Gaugamela, Darius gathered an even larger force, but Alexander's tactical brilliance again prevailed. Darius fled a second time and his empire crumbled. Alexander captured Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the heart of Persia. Betrayed by his own satrap Bessus, Darius III was murdered in 330 BCE, ending the Achaemenid dynasty. Alexander's conquest was swift because he struck a decaying empire already weakened by division. The role of satraps and regional autonomy. Persia's satrapal system, its provincial governance, was ingenious but risky. Each satrap ruled almost like a mini-king, collecting taxes and commanding troops. Under strong rulers, this system worked. Under weak ones, it invited rebellion. In the 4th century BCE, several satraps in Anatolia revolted against Artaxerxes II during the Great Satraps' Revolt, showing how fragile imperial unity had become. By Darius III's time, many satraps acted independently or delayed support. When Alexander invaded, some collaborated, others hesitated. In the empire's final days, Bessus's betrayal of Darius symbolized the collapse of loyalty. The satraps no longer saw the great king as their leader, but as a liability. The system that once held the empire together ultimately tore it apart. Internal rebellions and unrest. Revolts had long plagued the empire. Egypt repeatedly rebelled after Cambyses II's conquest, regaining independence for decades. Babylon, too, rose up against Persian rule when kings ignored traditional duties. The Ionian Greeks in Asia Minor sparked earlier wars. Each rebellion drained resources and revealed the fragility of control. By the time Alexander advanced, many provinces were weary of Persian rule. Cities like Babylon surrendered without resistance. The empire had lost not just battles, but the loyalty of its people. Strategic mistakes and leadership flaws. Finally, leadership failures sealed the empire's fate. Darius III inherited a declining realm but made costly errors. He underestimated Alexander, delayed engaging him, and chose poor battlefields. At Issus and Gaugamela, his premature retreats destroyed Persian morale. His diplomatic offers to Alexander, territories and ransom, were rejected and interpreted as weakness. Even as a fugitive, Darius failed to rally support, and his own officers turned on him. Earlier rulers had made their own mistakes. Xerxes' reckless invasion of Greece, Artaxerxes' neglect of Egypt, and the court's decadence all contributed to long-term decline. Darius III's failures were simply the final act of a slow erosion of leadership and discipline. Conclusion. The fall of the Achaemenid Empire was not a single catastrophe, but a convergence of many forces. Political instability eroded legitimacy. Military complacency left the empire vulnerable. Economic overreach and corruption drained its strength. Cultural disunity and rebellious provinces fractured its foundation. When Alexander's invasion came, Persia was already weakened by decades of decay. His victories were spectacular, but the empire had prepared the ground for its own fall. And yet, the Persian legacy endured. Alexander adopted Persian customs and administration, blending Greek and Persian traditions. Later empires, the Seleucids, Parthians, and even the Romans, borrowed from Achaemenid models of governance and infrastructure. The story of Persia's fall remains a powerful lesson, that even the greatest empires can collapse when unity fades, leadership falters, and internal rot meets an external storm.